Access all areas, how participatory design and assistive technology shape a more inclusive society. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 5th edition of the Build.well.being 2021. My name is Jacob Doppler, and together with my co-moderator Mariela Seel, who later will host the inspiring chat, we will guide you through the program today. Now, design and technology always comes with promises and the label of making things easy. But while analog technology involves much more senses such as touch, taste, smell, hear, we are most often left with our visual sense in a very, very narrow field on the screen. And this makes us sometimes feel helpless towards the computing device when it comes to digitalization. More so, this is of course apparent when sensory impairment or mental challenge is given. So it is me a big pleasure to announce our first keynote speaker, a very prominent figure in Austria when it comes to inclusive design and assistive technologies, and that is Klaus Miesenberger. So Klaus, I'll be happy to have you on board. Klaus is the head of the Institute Integriert Studieren at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz. He's also the scientific editor of the International Conference for Computer Helping People with Special Needs, and is the executive board member of the Competence Center for Promoting Inclusion throughout Austria. So Klaus, it is a pleasure to me to have you online. I don't know from where you connect, but probably from Linz at the Johannes Kepler University. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for the nice introduction and for having me in your wonderful series of events. And I trust you can hear me well. And I also trust that my slides are already shared. And the focus which I want to give today, and where I would like to invite you to make a small journey with me, is how to bridge an often existing gap between the health, the care sector, and what is nowadays more and more shaping as a field called accessibility and assistive technology. What I would like to do is not going into technical details, although I'm always in danger of doing that, but I would like to raise the issue how we could perhaps together develop an agenda, a research and development agenda, and also some practice ideas of cooperation. The first question, of course, most of the time when the issue is brought up about AT and accessibility is, why the hell should we in healthcare discuss about accessibility, assistive technology? It's not about disabilities. We are in the health sector. But I think there is much more in common of these two domains as we might expect. The first thing is, we share a history where when technology started, digitization started, which might be decades ago and even the last century, we all were afraid. Wow, we are in a social sector. We don't want to touch technology. It takes away our model of dealing with people. And it is much too techy, and therefore the social aspects of our job might be lost. A second aspect, when we more from a social sector were talking to IT people, to digitization, the response was often a groan. Why? Again, accessibility. They thought we do the thing and you simply take it up. So to say, we were boring for these people when we brought up the issues, the special requirements, be it in health domain, be it in accessibility, be it in disability. And one issue more is, of course, when problems occur, as Jacob already described it, when the interfaces did not work, it was always the fault of somebody else. We said we are not in the technical domain, and the techies said we did our thing, the interface is there, and therefore we were over decades, I would say, even a bit in a deadlock. That really the acceptance that the interfaces which are developed by mainstream are of course better and better by usability, but they neglect at a certain part, and the good part, the importance of taking the requirements of people with disabilities, but also the aging population, people with diseases, long-term diseases, and so on into account. And one thing more, we have in common that actually we're addressing the same people. When we look into the statistics, we immediately learn that disability is very much related to aging. If somebody likes to do statistical estimations, when we are getting 65, and I'm not so far away from this age, when I will get 65, and I have a probability of close to 60% that in the next 3 years, I might be confronted with a severe disability, which impacts so strong that I am no longer able to use the standard interface, that I need something what is called accessibility or what is called an assistive technology. And one thing more we have in common, when it comes to digitization, our focus is the same issue. We, with our clients, have to interface the same interface. We want to participate in society, and society goes digital. And when it goes digital, where we interact with technology is the standard technology, like mobile phones, like desktop computers, like tablets, and so on. And wherever they enter, we use it. You see here some figures, how often we use it. Everybody is there. And when we talk about Build.well.being, people are expecting that they can participate. There is nothing more engaging, nothing more healing, nothing better than being able to be part, to be independent in participation, communication, interaction, and all the activities in society. We must not underestimate the importance that we make clear that our clients, that people with disabilities, that the care sector looks into the possibilities that people with disabilities and also the care sector, that they can take part in the standard application, in the standard domain as the most important area they want to participate with. And therefore, I think it's nothing wrong that we make a particular focus when we look at our domain at the so-called human-computer interface, because this is what I brought to the title of my presentation, where digital Build.well.being, and therefore in the digital society, Build.well.being in general, starts. And very often assistive technologies and accessibility are key, that this interaction with machines can be built in place. Let me shortly outline 4 parameters and 4 qualities of this human-computer interface, which makes it so interesting to us. The first one, the human-computer interface is easy. Technology and easy over long times was seen as a contradiction, but nowadays we see it is a limited number of elements. When you really clearly look into the interface, of course, colors or whatever might change, pictures might change, symbol might change, but the basic elements are very few. If I would let you guess, most people estimate about 50 to 100, but actually it is less than 20, which studies shows of software and interface development. Less than 20 elements are used by designers, developers to implement the human-computer interface. Less than 20, and a lot of them are also combination of basic interface element. And it's a limited number of actions. Point and click, drag and drop, and then of course today we have our touch interaction, but it's also clicking and zooming or whatever, very limited. There is not a big deal of learning about this. And therefore, so to say, we have an easy to manage, but not for everybody. But basically, this made our society move towards digitization. And it is one of my hobbies to look into reason why was it possible that this interface became so easy? And I found more people in history which really made in the long run a difference. And one of them, which I would like to outline here, Joseph Licklider. This is not a computer scientist. He was also not the developer of the interface himself, but he started, as we should do, and as Jacob already outlined, He started from a strong user perspective. Licklider was in charge of the ground control in the NASA. And he was the guy, so to say, who brought the first people to the moon. The issue which he came up and said, we are overwhelmed by the amount of data which computers produce in the calculation of how people should fly and so on, all things which might happen, more and more data. And he identified we are no longer able to manage this numeric text-based interfaces. And so he made a proposal that we look into basic psychology and that we might use better symbolic representation, iconic representation of information. Why? Because this is natural to us. When we are not born, when we are still in the womb, we are already able, as non-born children, that we recognize patterns, voice patterns from our parents, touch patterns. We are able, we don't have to learn it. It's so natural to us. And based on this, the second element we should base our interfaces on are deictic gestures. And this is again a thing which comes to us naturally. Before we learn our language, or the base for learning language is the establishment, when we are about 11 months old, that we establish a relation between ourselves, the I, the object, the it, and another person, the you. And this triangulation by pointing at an issue, and then parents, relatives, friends, they speak out a word. When this triangulation is established, it starts immediately. Language development starts. And he proposed, these are the basic figures. Of course, there's a lot of complex information in the background, but these basic elements should be used to design interfaces. Here you see a small picture of the first interface they did on a screen. They experimented with a light pen. It did not work at all at that time, but other people took it up. I don't have a lot of people here. One of them, Douglas Engelbart, the picture on the right down, the first mouse. Instead of a light pen, he invented the mouse that you have a pointer on screen, and he proposed windows, containers of elements, menus that you can manage the interface, icons, and this pointer element. And when you look at it, and when you look today at the interfaces, they are still there. It became not only easy, but it became stable over time. Many more contributed, and it was already in about 1970. Alan Kay was a person, he designed the Office software, which we use today, more functionalities and so on, but the basic interaction principles of dealing with Office activities has been designed there and stayed stable. And here's also the Dynabook, the first presentation of a portable device in 1970. And the issue is, this guy who founded the company with the half-eaten up apple, he visited L&K and hired more than 10 people from his research team, and this was the basis, so to say, for the modern interface design. And what I quoted down here is the fact that since the beginning, I would say since Licklider, based on his iconic symbolic representation and his deictic interaction, only very small changes to the interface had made. A lot was added to it, but the basic interaction stayed the same, and companies follow it. Why? Because it's the most basic form of communication and interaction, and nobody can afford to step away. Why? Users would not follow. We don't want to learn, we want to have it intuitive, and we want to have it easy. And this is the fascinating thing, that we have a stable interface which we can use. And we move away from mouse and keyboard to touch interaction, to virtual augmented reality, to wearable interaction, to tangibles, to sensor-based interaction. But what we take with us when it comes to interaction, when it comes to the user, is we need a symbolic, iconic representation, might be visual, might be auditive, might be haptic, might be olfactoric in the future or whatever, and then a deictic interaction, which might be done by voice, which might be done by the finger haptic, which might be done by eye tracking, as we will hear today, or whatever. But the basic interaction, we hide all the complexity, we hide all the content behind these basic interaction principles. And this was the start that we replaced all the traditional interfaces. And remember, all the devices which we bought decades ago, you guys most probably are so young, you might not remember what a video recorder is. But these guys who had a video recorder like myself and had to program it, it was a nightmare. A video recorder came with 70 pages of manual, and when you had learned it and were able to do it, the video recorder, when it was broken and you bought a new one, you had to do it from scratch because the interface was totally different. And this changed considerably in the last decades. We have one interface, one basic principles. We have different devices to interact with the interface, and this universal interface also becomes adaptive. We can adapt the way how we do a symbolic representation and how we do this basic deictic interaction. And as we see, the interface is not only any longer desktop or mobile, we have it in the car, we have it in the house, in the heating, we have ATMs out there, whatever. We don't have to learn it. We go there, we trust, we can make a deictic gesture, the system responds and gives us information and leads us to the next step. And this hides all the enormous and growing complexity, which integrates into these basic interaction principles. So there is nothing wrong, I would say, when we also take this human-computer interface at focus when we are dealing with our clients, when we are dealing with healthcare, when we are dealing with people with disabilities. And the issue, or so to say, the basic principle is, again, very simple. We bring assistive functionalities or tools into play which allow us to interface the human-computer interface, interfacing the interface. And this includes assistive technology or not, but for sure, accessibility and usability. All the special requirements of the target groups which we are addressing have to have accessibility measures in the standard interface that they are able to use the same systems and services like everybody else. And this, so to say, and this brings me to the last part of my presentation, should allow us at least roughly to define a research and development agenda and also practice orientation, perhaps, in 7 domains between user, AT, HCI, systems and services, and the interfaces to them. Let me give you some short thoughts about these domains, which I think matches very much already with the introduction which Jacob gave us. The first one is user-centered design and user involvement. Starting from the left, we have to put the user at the focus. The success in assistive technology and accessibility, but also, I trust, in healthcare, is very much based on the fact that about 25, 30 years ago, developers, designers started to focus on including target groups directly in the design process, not thinking we are able to make good assumptions about the user, but actually looking at the complexity of the situation of each user, developing participatory methodologies, in particular for the aging population. And I think we have been very successful in the disability domain about these inclusive methodologies. I only quote here the EPI-UCD, Inclusive Participatory Action Research for Users-Centered Design, which focuses on people with severe cognitive disabilities, bringing them into the design process to design interfaces which you can handle as a severely cognitively disabled person. And I think that's very much interested also for healthcare. Dementia, aging is related with cognitive problems. And the second domain is the assessment. What we do normally, and I think in particular in healthcare, we make assumption about the users. When we assess a disability, an illness or whatever, we make an assumption. And this is critical because the issue here is the diversity of the users. Illnesses, disabilities are so diverse. I trust that you know the International Classification of Function and Disability. 1,400 categories plus. We need much more and much better methods, technologies helping us in the assessment, identifying the requirements and going over also towards the environment. We don't have to look only at the user as a person himself. We have to identify the environment, the parameters, to develop profiles of the user, which then can be used by the designers, developers, and the implementers. Assessment methods and tools bringing us from estimations and checklists towards data and evidence-driven, supported and automated assessment. This is the key, what we have to do in research and development in the future, and which includes, this cannot be done from technologists from outside. This has to be part of the service process, the healthcare service and the disability inclusion service process. Sensors, artificial intelligence, the goal, personalization at focus in Build.well.being. And then, of course, the diversity of assistive technologies. We always make 5 categories: motor disabilities, cognitive disabilities, hearing disabilities, mobility disabilities, and audio disabilities, vision disabilities, and audio disabilities. These categories, you find thousands of assistive devices, and even selecting the right one is considerably difficult. It is important that we come from prescriptive list of tools to personalized services, implementing the assistive service, that they are able to use the standard interface has to be done based on, I would say, platforms which allow to adapt. The last 5 meters, as we know it from network technology, the complexity lies in the last 5 meters, motivating people that they are even understand the potential of these tools. This is the complex area. And what we, only to mention them, what we working on are such frameworks for implementing assistive technologies and to inject accessibility support for people with disabilities into web content, into interface content, the Asterix framework and the easy reading framework. If you might be interested in that, use the URLs which are displayed here and have a look into them. And then it comes to accessibility, again a topic in itself, but what is evident nowadays, we all, our communication, our information, our texts, our web pages, whatever we use, we have to take care about accessibility. The support for accessibility gets better and better. The issue is everybody from us, we have to use the functionalities, be it for presentations, for documents, for web pages, whatever. Make them accessible, because this is the base that later on our clients, that they can use the same systems and services like everybody else. And then it comes more to technical issues. We have to monitor the development. HCI is a very dynamic field. And as I showed before, one of the professional things which I do with my students at our institute, we constantly monitoring what is coming up in human-computer interaction. And we look into that, is the potential for people with disabilities, and also what are the risks for excluding if it's not accessible, if we have no accessibility measures for them. And of course, we try to bring accessibility into the flow of design and development. And then the interoperability is, of course, a big issue. How all the devices, how all the systems which are out there, that they can interact and that they can be used by people with disabilities and also by people in the healthcare sector. It is not about technical issues, but what we need is the voice of professionals of the different domains in standardization, in developing guidelines, that they are really respected when the next standard for the next generation of technologies comes up. And also issues like security, privacy and vulnerability of our clients. This has to be addressed here. And then we come to the final thing, what we actually want to do. Build well-being, developing systems, assistive technologies, ambient assisted living systems, healthcare systems, and so on. The issue is, And what very often goes wrong, we start from here. We have a bright view, a new idea about what could be helpful. We have to do it the other way around. First, looking what are the requirements, what is the actual situation of the user, and start from the user and not starting from our own final vision of the system. And this should help us to build well-being into our society, digital society, and improve quality of life. With this, let me summarize the 7 domains, starting from user involvement, learning new methodologies. We have to start here and not from our technical, social, economical visions which we have. Look at the user, make it the focus and involve them. Do a proper assessment and learn that we use the data, that we have data-driven, evidence-driven assessment of requirements which really work when we put them into a profile. More and better personalized assistive devices and assistive functionalities. They can't be expected to be bought from the supermarket. We, in the process of service provision, have to do them. Accessibility by everybody of the HCI, every piece of information which we put out. HCI monitoring by experts, but having the voice of end user groups of the domain, standardization, interoperability, and in the end, of course, making systems which are acceptable, where users start to ask for them, that they are ready to make it part of their own user experience in their daily life. With this, I would say thank you. Of course, I'm available for further questions. And if it was very boring, please wake up now. We're expecting a wonderful presentation by Vanessa in the following. And therefore, if there are some questions, I'm ready to answer them. Thank you for your attention.
Klaus, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your huge wisdom actually that you have here. Maybe you could de-share your screen so that our viewers can see you one more time. Yes. Time is now for maybe one question from the audience if something is coming in. But before that, I'd like to address what you said about the personalization of services given the environment, because I don't think I don't know if it was you, but I think it was you. You said in one presentation that you gave that everyone of us is disabled in some way in certain environments or situations. So there was this issue of you cannot text over SMS while you are driving, for example. And this brings a totally different perspective to inclusiveness, to assistive technologies, and to accessibility. And I have to disagree with one point that you said. Basically, I'm not sure yet if the age of complexity of video recorders is over. They are just called in another way. They're called computers nowadays or whatever. But we are working on that. One question that I have, and it would be really interesting, is since it's called human-computer interaction, we as technicians mainly focus on the second part. What do you think? I mean, since new technologies with speech interaction and so on are coming up, how many emotional qualities does the computer interaction have to bring to the humans in order to get better acceptance, actually? Do you think that there is something in the future that might be interesting for research?
It is. I think when you see how long, because as you mentioned, speech interaction, it's already 40, 50 years old. And I have it on my PC since long. The issue is that in interface design technology development, we have to be very careful about the parameters what we are using. The issue is that the take-up of, for example, speech recognition is so slow is not a technical issue. It works fine since decades, mid of 90s. The issue is that people, and in particular we as technologists were never willing to look at the fact when we are dictating, the brain which we are using for dictating and the thinking brain is occupied. There are only psychological studies show perhaps 3, 5, perhaps 7, 8% who are really able to dictate, to separate, activating different areas of the brain for dictating, using the voice and thinking. And therefore, this fact and how we designed so far the speech interaction is simply overwhelming to most people. Remembering the key words, being ready to say something without thinking about it, and this simply led to a situation that people said, technologists, my colleagues said 40 years ago, in 5 years nobody will use a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
We have fair to say, this is when you look in this interdisciplinary approach, then you learn, and that's what we have to do, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. That's also an approach that we share, I think, quite a lot. We have one interesting question from the head of our technology institute, Wolfgang Eigner. He's asking on YouTube, are there any good standards or recommendations to start from when developing for interactive systems? So also from a legal perspective or from a governing perspective, where do we start researching or getting this information out?
The recommendation is, the fortunate thing is that the development of the World Wide Web is very much focused on the World Wide Web Consortium, and they have one unit which is called Web Accessibility Initiative. And the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, they still have the name Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, but more and more, because they are vendor, they are product, they are technology independent. And I would say this is the best resource. You find a lot of accompanying materials. You have an endless number of examples, good best practice. And this is, of course, for the web. But as we know, all the interfaces converge in network connectivity and so on. They are used. We, for example, also for software accessibility, we don't use the ISO software accessibility standard. We much more use the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG. Now in the version 2.1, I would recommend to look at them and all the materials around them.
Okay. Klaus, once again, thank you very much for sharing your insights. We have over 100 people actually watching our stream currently, so this is also a big message out to accessibility, participatory design, and technology. Thank you very much.
I said it earlier, then I would have been much more nervous.
But yeah, but you still have a cool down phase because we see you later at the inspiring chat. So please, I want you to share your camera now. And we have actually our next guest up and next speaker up, and she is Vanessa Leung. And Vanessa Leung depends on how you say it, is a Novartis Research Foundation grant winner. And she developed there an eye tracking device together with her husband, actually. And we are much happy at the University of Applied Sciences, St. Pölten, that we have Vanessa joining us now at the Center for Digital Health and Social Inclusion. Vanessa is already up. She has a talk up, so I can now swipe to you. So hi, Vanessa, it's good to have you here. Where are you currently situated, actually?
I'm right now in Vienna.
Okay.
So I'm speaking to you from my home in Vienna. And thank you very much for the introduction. I'm happy to be part of Build.well.being, and I hope to give a very positive message of how digital technology can indeed enhance well-being. And I'll start with what we've been working on, which came up again on the news very, very recently, in April, in fact, that children and young people all over the world are becoming more and more short-sighted. They're needing glasses. And this has again been noticed during the lockdown, when many children are indoors a lot and also in front of screens a lot, that again, their eyesight is deteriorating. And this actually is the latest episode, if you like, on a trend that we've noticed for a very long time. For 50 years, in fact, that at the rate that we're going, half of the world's population will be short-sighted by 2050. And if you think, oh, that's not so bad, we can just all go around wearing glasses or contact lenses, it's more complicated than that, because the more myopia or short-sightedness we have in the population, the more likely there are people who are highly myopic. And these people will have a greater chance of further vision problems as they age that could eventually lead to blindness. So it's not the wearing the glasses that's the problem, is the associated vision problems that might be really a problem. So what it has shown, what we can see is that, this is more than a problem of genetics, because genetics don't give you problems that rapidly increase within 50 years. That points really to a lifestyle issue. And the lifestyle issue seems to be that children are spending very much less time outdoors, and at the same time a lot more time in near work, so reading, writing, screen time, etc. But the details are still quite fuzzy. So what is it about being outdoors that is so good for regulating the growth of the eye, and what is it about being indoors and doing near work that is so bad? That's not clear, and the data is sadly missing, because it's very difficult to track people's visual habits through conventional means. If you ask, the conventional means is usually a questionnaire. And if you have kids yourself, I can imagine that if I ask you, so how much time did your children spend outdoors today? And how much time did they spend reading? You'll be at a bit of a loss to give me really accurate numbers. So what we thought was that there is a data gap, and the gap is really in quantitative data, in measurable data on how children and young people are using their eyes in the modern environment. And without this data, it's very hard to design effective interventions. And so what we thought we could do is to develop a wearable device, which would measure the way people are using their eyes in the real world, because it's no good measuring them in the lab. They're not going to behave in the same way they're going to behave when they're at home or when they're at school. And the whole premise of this project, it was thought to be a little bit unconventional, and we were not sure that we would get funded for it. But fortunately, in the same year that we proposed it, 2016, there was also a very, I consider, innovative funding program set up in Switzerland called Free Innovation, which we'll talk a bit more about this in the panel discussion, which really allowed these kind of out-of-the-box ideas to be funded. And so we were funded by Free Innovation, and our device looks something like this. So it's a pair of glasses with you can think of it as two layers of sensors. There are the sensors which are looking inwards, if you like, looking at the eyes, tracking what they're doing, what the pupils are doing, what the eyeballs are doing. And then there's a second layer of sensors which are looking out into the world. So they are tracking what is the light intensity in the room? Are we inside or outside? Are we reading? If we're reading, how close is the reading material? That kind of thing. So we have this is really the key idea, that we have this data stream from the eyes and the data stream coming in from the environment. And by correlating those, we can start to get insights. The whole thing has to be mobile. So all the data was stored on a mobile phone, basically. And so it's a wearable device. I can show you what this looks like. Novartis did a whole really nice article on our work if you're interested. And for me, the positive part is that it gives me nice pictures to show. So this is a picture of our device. It's a eye tracker, a commercial eye tracker. That's kind of the backbone. And on top of that, you can see that there is a circuit board which has a LiDAR, a distance sensor, that allows us to measure distances for near work. There is on the bottom left-hand corner another circuit board, a much smaller one, and this has all the light sensors, and we measure white light intensity as well as ultraviolet, infrared, RGB intensity. So we also spectrally resolve to a certain extent the light intensities that we were measuring. This is what it looks like. So apart from the glasses, you have a cable that goes to the data unit, basically a smartphone, and the smartphone then goes into a pouch that the user just wears. So as you can see on the student sitting at the desk, the arms are free. They're basically very free to move around. Is not something that's cumbersome, and that's how this works. We were very lucky in that we were able to collaborate with myopia experts. We went to a myopia conference with our idea. You can imagine these outsiders, these technologists, with their idea of building eye trackers for looking at myopia. runs into this conference full of experts who have been doing this for 20 years and say, oh, look, can we help? Can we help? And fortunately for us, they were very welcoming. And I really thought that was a great bonus, how open the community was to our ideas. And in particular, we collaborated with a team in Hong Kong who have been studying myopia for many years, and they were able to connect us with schools in Hong Kong. So we were able to then make measurements of 50 children in the classroom. And so this is an example of how we could get a lot of data within a very short time. And what I also liked about working with the optometrists was that they embedded us very nicely in a greater community health program that they were part of. So they were already going to schools, measuring children's eyesight, prescribing them with glasses if they need to. And we were just our whole digital project was just one part of that. So we had a high participation rate. People were very open to let us into their schools. And I found that really helpful to be part of a bigger public health program. So it's not just about the digital technology. So this plot is for me is very exciting, and I'll tell you why. Because this plot shows how you can get from these two data streams I was talking about really information about physiology. So on the vertical axis, you have the pupil diameter. You have the size of the pupil that you get from the eye tracker. On the horizontal axis, you have the white light intensity. You have the data you get from the environmental sensors of how bright the room is, basically. And what you see is that when there is very little light, the pupil diameter is large. And when there's more light, the pupil diameter is small. And this is something that we all know, that when you're in a dark room, you have big pupils, and as soon as you walk out into the sunshine, your pupils contract. And what I find great about this is that here we have a physiological effect that we basically just got from time correlating these two data streams, knowing that, oh, the light has changed and the pupil size has changed. And we are able to extract physiological information. Not only that, but we're also able to extract behavioral information. So this is a very busy graph, but we won't look into all of it. I just want to show you that this is the same child at school, a fourth grader, who is at a desk, and we've given him assigned tasks. We've asked him to read, to write something, and I think to play a computer game. And on the other side, he's in the classroom. And the thing is, you could have known that without me actually telling you all that information, because if you look down on the third row, this is the LiDAR, this is the distance sensor information. And you could see that when he's at the desk, his LiDAR distances are all bunched up. The distribution is all bunched up around 300 millimeters, like 30 centimeters, which is the working distance of most people when they are reading or writing. So just looking at that graph, this person is doing a lot of near work right now. Compare that to the other side where he's in the classroom, and the distribution from the LiDAR is much broader. There is still that bump at around 300 millimeters. So he's still doing near work some of the time, but at other times, he seems to be looking over at another desk at 1 meter, 800 millimeters. He probably is looking also at the blackboard. We can't see that because the LiDAR has a certain cutoff, but he's obviously not just doing near work. And so just from those graphs, you could see, oh, this person is here doing near work, and here is doing near work and something else. The top graphs, for example, with the hemispheres, shows that the person is, and when they're doing at the desk, they are scanning a bit because it's the angular distribution of the gaze. And so the fact that there's a bit of a blob in the middle means that they're moving a bit from left to right, their eyes, as they're reading or writing or whatever. So the second row, for example, shows that the autocorrelation of the eye movement. It means the steeper the slope, the faster someone is moving their eyes. And interesting enough, whether this person's doing near work or simply in a more general class environment, this doesn't change. They seem to move the eyes just as much. So imagine how would you be able to get all this without the digital technology? How much time would you have to observe someone to notice all these things about them? And in some cases, it's almost impossible to get it to this level of quantification. So there, I think, is with the power of this project, but what this project illustrates in the long run, that we can really measure things that we would otherwise have no access to, and perhaps gain insight into problems like myopia, but also other ones that we would otherwise not have access to because we just can't we can't go there through questionnaires or other conventional observational means. So where can we take this? Where can we take eye tracking? Well, one I've shown is visual behavior, and associated with that, ocular disorders like nystagmus, problems with binocular vision. And because the eyes is so closely connected to cognitive processes, it shows a lot about attention and interest, right? We know when people are interested in something, they tend to look, and when they're not interested, their eyes kind of go somewhere else. And at the same time, on the same coin, learning difficulties like dyslexia and ADHD are already two application areas where eye tracking is really being used quite extensively. On a different level, eye tracking is also used for remote expertise. So a couple of years ago, we were writing a proposal with an eye doctor in Tanzania, who told us the problem that in Tanzania, there are very, very few eye doctors, and especially in rural areas, there are children who just don't get inspected by an eye doctor ever. There's just not enough personnel. What remote expertise can do is that, for example, a teacher or a nurse can wear a pair of eye tracking goggles, and they could have an expert look through those goggles and inspect someone's eyes or inspect any other health issue and kind of give a bit of an expert advice. Should this person now go and get professional help? Should they be transported to a clinic or not? So eye tracking is really great for bring expertise to places where otherwise people just won't go, or have, there's no resources to send people. Finally, eye tracking is really the basis, one of the key technologies in augmented and virtual reality. You really need to know what people's eyes are doing if you want to build an AR or VR environment. So clearly that's a big part of it. And I would like to I know that after my talk comes these pictures from master students in digital health, and I'm really looking forward to seeing these great ideas. And so I just thought I'll share what I thought really helped us in getting our idea off the ground, because I've identified in hindsight 3 things that I thought were really important. So we have our idea. And first, we had the funding support. We had a funding agency who was risk tolerant, who wanted innovative ideas, who was willing to back us. Secondly, we had technological support. So we're piggybacking on a commercial eye tracker device. If the technology was not mature enough and there were no commercial eye trackers, we would have had to use all our project money and our project time to develop this half-working eye tracker and never get to the field, basically. So we really needed to piggyback on mature technology that was available. And finally, we had the community support. We had these myopia specialists who have been working with animal models, had done clinical trials, and could really tell us what to do, what to measure, basically. And that was very helpful, and as well as embed us in a public health initiative that was much bigger than our part and allowed us to really benefit from that. So I would like to thank quite a few institutions. So we did this work in the Department of Biomedical Engineering at the University of Basel. This was still when I was still in Switzerland. And the field work, as I said, we collaborated with the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. The project was funded by the Novartis Free Innovation Program, as well as the Swiss State Department for Education, Research and Innovation. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Vanessa, very much for your introduction to this topic of taking eye tracking to the real world. I really can relate to a lot of things, especially what you said about the rapid prototyping of a healthcare interface. What I personally like very much about your project is that it shows a little bit that this usability and this wearability of these healthcare devices need to somehow be a little bit pervasive, because you can gain data, you get a lot of insights, but wearing a pair of glasses is pretty easy. Actually, I can relate to this myself. And additionally, if you get all this information out, then you probably don't need end users to wear these devices anymore if you know, okay, that especially in schools, these 2 hours or these is pretty important to get this near field and wide field vision. Do you know what I mean?
It was really interesting, Jacob, because what we found was that the children who were already wearing glasses were much more accepting of when we put on the eye trackers. What was the trouble was the control group, which was the children who had no myopia. So they're not used to wearing glasses at all. and they had a lot more resistance to putting on the eye tracker. So as you say, it's really about how adapted people are to certain technologies, and glasses being a very old technology for seeing better, that has been around for many years.
Yeah, we have a few more questions actually, and a round of applause for your talk. So thank you very much for this. I just pick out one question because we are a little bit ahead of time already, and you are part of the inspiring chat later on anyway, also where we could have these questions again. Wolfgang Eigner once again asks, can mental load be interfered by the pupil diameter change? So is there some relation between the mental load and your eyes changing, and could this be measured probably with your device?
Yes. There has been some studies. I could definitely point you to papers about mental load, cognitive load, and the pupil diameter. Yes, for sure. That's a very interesting point. It would be. The thing is that now we have to deconvolute if someone's pupil diameter changed, did they just happen to look out the window and was bright outside, so now their eyes are contracting, or is it the mental load, or is it this and that? So it's a little bit, that's why I think the environmental sensors are really important, because that gives the context. If the pupil diameter changes because the light also changed, I was like, okay, that might just be a regular contraction, dilation, physiological response. If it was because there was near work and nothing else changed except the near work, then we can say maybe it's mental load. Maybe it's what they're reading or writing that is suddenly, firing, loading the cognition, and so there it really illustrates, but for sure that you can look at these definitely with the pupil dilation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Vanessa, thank you very much for also giving us the insight into your research project, and we are really happy to have you also at our university, I would say. So please share your screen again so that all the viewers can see me in full brightness, but hopefully only short, because now we're coming to actually rapid 5x5 student pitches. So for us, it is always really important on the one hand to show up the next gen ideas that come up, and we really believe in those because they are pretty good, and especially given the circumstances and the difficulties this year. For example, the projects of the students that you now see within the next 20 minutes those are all done by students remotely. So we haven't seen our students since September 2020 here at the university, and this actually makes it even more impressive, the results that we can see. What is important when you talk about health, to us health also, as we heard today in various circumstances, is it involves also well-being, and also it involves social innovation and social care. So basically health itself alone is not a field, but you always have to care about circumstances. And what makes actually innovative project successful is this interdisciplinary work between the fields, and the technical expertise, and also the innovative approach. So for the first project that we see now, this has been done in the field of radiotherapy. BreathX is a project by a few students, Judith Höllebrand, Lisa Meneder, Kerstin Brock, Theresia Schauerhofer, and the two speakers, Baumgartner Samuel and Anna Springer, will present an audiovisual feedback system to gently guide patients through radiotherapy. And as I heard, Anna and Samuel are already ready, so I can switch live to the FH St. and get their contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation to the Build.well.being 2021.
Please take a deep breath and hold your breath.
This is what you hear when a breast cancer patient undergoes radiotherapy with the deep inspiration breath hold technique. As you may see, it is not that easy for patients to follow these instructions as good as possible. Deep inspiration breath hold means that the patients must hold their breath in a specific area to decrease the radiated heart and lung tissue, to keep the mean dose as low as possible and to reduce radiation-induced diseases. Due to the deep inspiration breath hold technique, the radiated normal and healthy tissue will be minimalized, and that also evokes a decrease in side effects. Currently, patients only receive verbal instructions from the radiology technologist about the accuracy of their breathing performance. These instructions are not always easy to follow for the patients, and this causes additional stress for the patients and leads also to an increased workload for the radiology technologist. With BreathX, we developed a non-clinical prototype that provides audiovisual feedback for patients during radiotherapy, thus ensuring a pleasant and stress-free treatment experience. We expect of this multisensory concept a decrease in treatment time per session and also an improvement of patient compliance during radiological treatment. Patients can fulfill the treatment requirements more easily.
We've chosen to develop our working prototype in the node-based programming system VVVV. With its real-time visualization capabilities and implementation of the Azure Connect, it was the perfect fit for our undertaking. A 3D model is loaded into VVVV, and its translation is linked to the time-of-flight camera of the Azure Connect. VVVV can read and output the depth information from the Connect. We programmed a simple UI interface to interact with the depth information from the camera. This allows us to track the thorax movement of the patient with pixel-perfect accuracy. We've developed a simple calibration method to ensure compatibility with every thorax of every patient. We set a minimum and maximum amplitude of the thorax, and this ensures a smooth and constant and consistent experience for every patient. A fine-tuning of these values allows for a smooth experience, and we will continue to fine-tune and prototype BreathX to ensure the best possible experience for all its users. The position of the Connect allows for very accurate depth tracking of the patient's breathing. It is important that the Connect looks down on the patient's thorax within a 90-degree angle to ensure accurate depth tracking.
Our vision of BreathX goes even further. In the next step, it is planned to test our prototype in a clinical setting and connect it to the existing infrared camera in the treatment room. Furthermore, we would like to develop a mobile phone app for the patients to train their breathing with various exercises before starting the radiotherapy treatment. If you have any further questions, feel free to ask. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you very much to the team of BreathX, and we immediately come to the second group of students. They're called Cochlea, a listening exercise adventure for kids with cochlear implant. So basically it's about hearing impairment and the kinds of training that you could do to help children to get a better feel for what they are hearing.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy to introduce you together with my study colleague, Anna-Maria Windhofer to our project Cochlea. But it is not just the two of us. We also have 4 other brilliant team members in our project group. Johannes Ecker, a radiologist, Stephanie Muck, a speech therapist, Armin Pertev, a radiologist as well, and Helena Wagner, she's an orthoptist. But now let us talk about hearing training for children with cochlear implants. You may ask why it is important and why does something like hearing training even exist? Well, the answer is hearing with a cochlear implant is not the same as normal acoustic hearing. With a CI, the hearing nerve gets provided with electrical stimulation instead of acoustic sounds. This different way of hearing may sound mechanical at first. Therefore, the brain has to translate this electrical stimulation into noises, sounds, words, or music. If children with cochlear implants undergo hearing training and practice at home too, it is possible to reach a more natural sound and finally, speech recognition.
Lang. Film. Ach, das ist langweilig.
You could see a typical hearing training session at a speech therapist. The child was bored very quickly and does not look very motivated as well. This and the fact that there is no Austrian version of a hearing training for children leads us on to create an innovative, futuristic and interactive hearing training for children with cochlear implants.
How exactly do we want this vision to be realized? Using VoiceFlow, we developed a skill for Amazon Alexa. By issuing the command Alexa, starte Cochlea, the skill is launched. Right now, the child can choose between 2 exercises. Number 1, Geräuschedetektiv. Alexa plays a sound which the child then has to identify. Number 2, Silbenzauber. The child has to guess the number of syllables of a word played by Alexa. An additional key feature of Cochlea is the integration of a robot ball called SpheriBolt. SpheriBolt purely exists for the reason of gamification and motivation. The child navigates the ball through a labyrinth by completing individual tasks from the exercises. This combination of Alexa and SpheriBolt not only provides the child with linguistic but also with visual feedback.
Hallo Johannes, möchtest du Übung 1, Geräusche starten?
Ja.
Auf geht's. Beginnen wir mit der Übung ein Geräusche. Du hörst jetzt immer ein Geräusch und sagst mir dann, welche der beiden Auswahlmöglichkeiten richtig ist. Lass uns beginnen. Hier ist Geräusch Nummer 1. Hast du Geschirrklappern oder einen Lastwagen gehört?
Geschirrklappern.
Super, das war richtig. Auf geht's, Sphero. Los. Kommen wir nun zu Übung 2.
Through this gamified experience, our primary aim is to increase the child's motivation and compliance, and thus its success in therapy in the long run. In the future, multiple playfields and more difficult levels and exercises will be added to create a more varied learning environment. We thank you for your attention and hope that you could get a good insight into the project of Cochlea, a listening exercise adventure for children to increase motivation and success of therapy.
Thank you very much to the second group for presenting the project. We immediately go back to the St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences for our third project, which is called Matchletics, Back to Sport with Joint Effort. And it's basically about matchmaking of patients undergoing rehabilitation and what they could do to train or have therapy together.
Hi, I'm Elise.
And I'm Michael.
And we have one thing in common. We had an injury that we didn't quite well recover from. After an injury, you usually get medical treatment, which includes some hours of physiotherapy, and after that you get declared as rehabilitated. But at this stage, the daily load is manageable, but you aren't ready for high-impact sports again. And this is the problem. People get back to sports too early and experience a second injury or do not reach the pre-injury performance level. That's why we created a method to get back to sports safely. Let us introduce Matchletics, the Tinder for rehabilitation. To break down our idea, we first had to focus on one particular part of the human, the knee. 1/5 of all knee injuries in Austria are anterior cruciate ligament rupture. The incidence is 45 per 100,000 inhabitants per year. In the mountain area it's even 70 and in the plain it's 30. Knee injuries are common and particularly seen in contact and impact sports. As mentioned before, many athletes do not reach the pre-injury performance level or even experience a second knee injury. Evidence-based rehabilitation programs as well as knee injury prevention programs exist. However, evidence shows that there is often a lack of adherence, which is crucial to determine the success or failure of rehabilitation. Our initial idea is to support athletes after a knee injury to pursue their rehabilitation in the late stage by providing an interactive setting and help them to find a safe way back to sport. However, the adherence to the program is a crucial aspect that could determine the success or failure of rehabilitation. Therefore, we want to boost the adherence to rehabilitation programs. But how do we do that?
Matchletics. Get back to sport with joint effort. Matchletics is a research project that aims to identify which interactive methods can increase adherence to a health application that aims to assist athletes in the late stage of rehabilitation. There are two ways that we want to try, but let's focus on the more interesting one first. You all know Tinder. What makes Tinder that successful is how easy they made it to meet new people. So why not bring that concept into rehabilitation? We therefore develop an app that matches people with knee injuries with other people in the same stage of rehabilitation. As you can see right now, while I am training, I get matched with another person who trains together with me. By matching those two people together, we want to find out if this matching process that made Tinder that successful can also boost the adherence to a rehabilitation program. The second solution that we want to compare to traditional training programs is giving you live feedback from our digital assistant. While you are training, our algorithm validates your posture and provides you with real-time feedback. Up to now, we are developing the app. We already conducted expert reviews to validate the design of our app and our study, so that we can start the pilot experiment next semester. Since we are a University of Applied Sciences, we wanted to bring in both the applied and the science. So keep up to date with our progress to stay on the cutting edge of research about how you can improve the adherence of patients to rehabilitation programs. We examine how to improve the way to get you back to sport with joint effort.
We are the Tinder for rehabilitation programs.
My name is Michael.
My name is Elise.
And we are Matchletics.
Thank you for matchmaking. This team was Michael Macher, Alice Rottmann, Ina Lang and Nina Peach. And we immediately come to the fourth group named Hospital Check-in, the digital patient onboarding. It deals about how a patient enters a hospital and what way this could be made easier. This project has been done by Anna Stadler, Michael Getzinger, who will present it, together with Martin Elser, Simone Hofbauer, Dennis Rosner and Elena Schneider.
Thank you, Jacob, for your introduction. We've all heard about these hospital horror stories where just everything went wrong, right? Our project team consists of 6 different professions, but we've all seen similar problems during hospital admission, which we're now trying to optimize and solve. For this pitch, we will present you our project idea and the implementation with the help of a live demonstration and show you our opportunities as well. Our concept is called Hospital Check-in and allows patients to check in online from home and prepare them before their hospital stay. Due to increasing health expenditures, healthcare facilities are forced to optimize their processes. Hospital check-in will make the admission management in hospitals way easier. This is Riley, who is 45 years old and needs an appointment scheduled for a computer tomography. Riley enjoys spending time with the family, loves nature and climbing. As you can imagine, Riley is feeling a bit stressed and anxious before the appointment. Doesn't feel well prepared, is expecting long waiting times during the hospital admission, and Riley wonders, am I going to miss my appointment? Have I packed everything?
Riley, don't be afraid, we've got the solution for you. After Riley got the appointment scheduled, an email will be sent where a link leads to Riley's personalized hospital check-in site. There, the patient is able to set an appointment reminder and edit or view the data on the personal device only. This ensures that the patients won't lose control over their data. There's also further information linked to the public hospital check-in website, where Riley can find facts about the treatment and the hospital, as well as preparation videos. What's unique about hospital check-in? Data transmission is completely safe for our users. A lot of work went into looking for a suitable method of personal data transmission. As a result, we came up with the smart idea of transmitting this data only after the patient is connected to the hospital's network. Because of hospital check-in, Riley now feels well prepared and less stressed before the stay and confidently encounters the upcoming appointment. And you know what else? Administrative staff will also profit from time savings due to our concept. As you can see here, an employee can insert the patient's data and select the required documents and treatments. We have already carried out surveys with fewer patients to help with our structure and are further planning a workshop with patients testing the usability. The possibility to grow hospital check-in is the connection to the hospital information system, as well as the expansion to the discharge management. Now you can start your hospital journey as easy as your check-in.
Hop on the fast lane for your next hospital visit.
For further information, you can watch our concept video.
So, and now we give it up for the last group of students' presentation, and they actually have a quite different approach than the other 4 projects, because all the other 4 projects, they involve mostly being indoors. The project that you see now is basically digitalization but outdoors, which is quite hard actually to achieve. So Parktiv is a family gaming app for actively playing in the park, and how this can be done with digitalization we will hear shortly from Viktoria Königshofer and Thomas Wolfinger, together with their team Josef Leonardsberger, Seda Özeckin, Laura Scheller and Irene Weiss.
Hey, you! Tired of just sitting around? Bored, even outside? From children to grannies, studies on the activity level of Austria's population show that they often spend their time sitting in the front of the computer, watching TV, or being on the bus or train. Outdoor activities often play only a secondary role in everyday life, although they are so important for our well-being. To feel much better and healthier, it doesn't have to be hours of cardio training. To increase the activity level in daily life, we present our interactive gaming application Parktiv. I am Vicky.
And I'm Thomas. And in the next few minutes, we will guide you through our app. With the application, we want to establish a creative and problem-solving opportunity to improve the well-being of children and adults. The game will be carried out mainly in parks of urban areas and combines challenging and interesting inputs. So, let us present you a few topics to get a deeper understanding for Parktiv. Let's start with how Parktiv works. The game concept of Parktiv is a simple digital memory game. QR codes represent animals as memory cards. They are attached in the park and easy to find. Each animal represents an exercise. The aim is to catch an animal by performing the exercise related to it. Parktiv supports target group specific exercises by using roles. By finding all pairs of animals, the game will be finished. For a better understanding of the game concept, here comes a short video. Hilfe! In unserem Tierpark sind die Tore über Nacht offen gelassen worden, weshalb die Tiere nun frei im Park herumlaufen. Helft uns, die Tiere wieder in ihr Gehege zu bringen, indem ihr sie findet und kurze Bewegungen mit ihnen macht. Findet gemeinsam so viele Tierkartenpaare wie möglich. Findet einen QR-Code. Wow, ein Känguru! Marc, zeig dem Känguru, wie hoch du springen kannst. Toll, du bist dem Känguru auf der Spur. Such den zweiten QR-Code, um es einzufangen. Juhu, das zweite Känguru. Sophie, um es nach Hause zu bringen, zeig ihm, wie gut du in die Luft boxen kannst. Super, du hast das erste Tier wieder in sein Zuhause gebracht.
And now, what's unique about Parktiv? Children can discover the fun of movements in a playful way. It is a perfect possibility of integrating exercises in an interactive way. Our activity guidelines were specially developed and adapted by the physiotherapists in our team. The place of performance is a nearby park in an urban area. Children, parents, friends, and everyone who wants to be active outside can play together and support each other. At the end of our presentation, we want to introduce ourselves briefly. Our team brings together 6 motivated people from 5 different professions in health and technology. Together, we want to encourage children and families who live in urban areas to explore the fun of outdoor activities. Their socio-economic status and housing situation should thereby have no impact. So, to sum up, Parktiv was developed specifically for urban areas. The advantage is that the app can only be used in designated parks and green spaces. In this way, children, families, and friends can be encouraged to spend more time outdoors. So, being outside today, let's go!
Thank you very much to the last group. So we have 5x5 students' ideas that gave us a vision about how healthcare, well-being, and social innovation can be done, not in the future, but even now. And now it's time actually to come to the last part of our online stream here, the inspiring chat. The inspiring chat is an is a format, basically a podium discussion that is done by my colleague Mariella Seel and together with a few guests that we have here. So I'll hand over to her shortly. And today the topic of the discussion is the cost of diversity. Should technology care? And it involves the two past speaker that we had, plus a new person that Mariella Seel will introduce shortly. So we are still waiting for one person to join in. She's called Petra Plunger. So as soon as we have these four people ready, I'll give it up to you now, Mariella, and I wish you all a good time with the inspiring chat.
Well, thank you, Jacob, for handing over to me, and welcome everyone to our inspiring talk about the cost of diversity. Should technology care? My name is Mariella Seel. I'm a junior researcher at the St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences, and I'm really looking forward to having an inspiring discussion with a wonderful panel. But before we start, I want to give you a short statement from a health sociology perspective to think about. Impairment does not come from physical or mental restrictions. Impairment happens as a product of social organization within our society. So not single individuals need to change, but we as a society. And with this in mind, I want to introduce you to today's talk about the cost of diversity and inspiring ideas on how technology could be used to let everyone participate in a social life. When we talk about diversity, we do not only mean people who don't seem to fit into stereotypical roles. We mean everyone, because every single strength and weakness every one of us has contributes to diversity. This can be physical properties such as perfect health or being in need of special assistance. This can be mental impairment, or this can be something that will happen to all of us, age. Nearly 20% of the Austrian population are older than 65. And as life expectancy has risen to around 80 years, we will have to think of solutions for enabling the elderly to lead a healthy and fulfilling life up to a high age. Also, nearly 20% of the Austrians live with some kind of impairment. As I said in the beginning, impairment does not come from certain pathologies. It happens within a society. So we as a society are responsible for enabling everyone within to participate. And that's quite a good start into our discussion. I am happy to introduce to you Dr. Klaus Miesenberger, Head of Institute Integriert Studieren at Johannes Kepler University Linz, with long years experience in using computers for helping people with special needs. Novartis research grant winner Dr. Vanessa Loing, researcher at the Center for Digital Health and Social Innovation at St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences, and Dr. Petra Plunger, researcher at the Ilse Adel Institute for Social Inclusion Research at St. Pölten University. Dr. Plunger, you have many years of research experience in your field. Could you please give us a short insight into your work and tell us what are participatory approaches in research and development? And I guess you have to unmute your microphone first.
Sorry, I hope you can hear me now. Thanks,
Yes,
Mariella, for supporting me and for introducing me. Yeah, well, and thanks for inviting me to this inspiring talk. I'm very happy to be here, actually. Well, and it's a great pleasure for me to, talk again about participatory research, because I guess we have heard quite a lot about participatory research, in the previous talks, starting with Klaus Miesenberger, but also with Vanessa, and actually the students who were so engaged in their research, and I found it really fantastic, their presentations. And I think this is, something I really like, that people are so engaged about research. I personally have been doing participatory research for the last 8 years or so. I'm basically coming from health promotion, which is a very interdisciplinary field. And I'm also a trained pharmacist. And not by coincidence, the projects I did in the last years mostly focused on healthcare settings and how these healthcare settings could become more age-friendly or, and more specifically, more dementia-friendly. And what that means was like, that we as a research team, and this is kind of, one characteristic of participatory health research, that you're trying to do investigations, of course, but you're also trying to but you're also intervening in certain settings. So this is kind of a double approach you're always having. And I think it's also what also is very, I think, specific about participatory research is that you are really building connections with your partners in the field. This could be professionals, but also community groups, self-help groups, or whatever, what have you. So what we basically did as researchers, that we started in the, it was called the Dementia Friendly Pharmacy Project, that we, from the start, tried to involve people who are actually affected by services provided in pharmacies to caregivers and people with dementia. So we started out with involving a self-help group of caregivers of people with dementia in designing the project, actually, and also people from community pharmacies and the Austrian Chamber of Pharmacy, because these are, the groups of people you want to have in a project when you're doing research in a healthcare setting like community pharmacies. And I guess the most intriguing part about participatory research is really that you see change happen. I mean, that you really see change happen, and it's not kind of a value judgment. You could do any other kind of methodology or research you're interested in. So it's not that participatory research is kind of the better research. It's just, one approach you could take or not take. This is up to you as a researcher. But the thing I'm really, intrigued about is seeing change happen and really seeing how that really, having people with different perspectives, different experiences, and different backgrounds in one room, so to say, to exchange experiences and to, come up with a solution which might be, totally different if, just one group has developed it. This really, I think, makes, at least for me, participatory research so intriguing and so, I would say, fruitful for at least health promotion research, which is, always about change. So that's basically what I can say. But I'm standing at the shoulders of persons who are very, very famous, and this is actually started already. What's now? Like 80 years ago with Kurt Lewin, who proposed, he was a social psychologist, and already, in the 40s, he proposed that, and he was very interested in exploring how minority groups at that time, how they could become more empowered and independent and equal. So this research really started, years ago, and it's still proliferating under many different terms like collaborative research or participatory community-based research. And there are some, more recent trends like citizen science or third mission, if it's about, universities and universities of applied sciences. So yeah, I deeply believe that this is an approach which could really foster inclusion and also change our minds in terms of, how we perceive different groups of people in our society. And I guess I will stop here.
So you mentioned citizen science and community engagement. Shouldn't inclusion and enabling members of the society to lead a self-determined and self-managed life, shouldn't that be crucial missions of our society?
Well, it's hard to say.
Not something that should come from research, but something that should come from like the society itself.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I guess it's hard to say no to that, what you're proposing. So I definitely agree. I think I would like to somehow take it like a broader picture. I think, it's not like a charity that we are involving people. It's actually that we are missing a lot as a society. If we exclude certain groups of people, we are missing a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of engagement and passion. So, I mean, for me, there's no question that we have to involve different groups of people. Yeah, for sure. But also, for our good, not only, to be like a better person, so to say.
Thank you. So, Dr. Miesenberger, let's focus on the setting of education and studying at the JKU. Could you please give us a short overview of actions for inclusion at JKU? And you might tell us, are these homemade solutions because there's not enough support or actions coming from the government or from public authorities?
Thank you for this question. Actually, everything started, and this brings perhaps the second part of the question into play, is it started with an initiative, a model project where computer scientists were considering, based on these new technologies which were evolving 70s, 80s, and so on, there's a huge potential for people with disabilities. And a research project was started. And the fun thing at that, or the good thing at that time, going back to participatory research, end users, people who were blind, hearing impaired, and so on, they said, wonderful that you do research, but when is something happening in practice? And this was an enlightener for us. And so we said, yes, it should be practical what we do, and what is closer to us as computer scientists, researchers, than making our own environment accessible for students with disabilities. And we started our services for students with disabilities, which have been, and now less because more and more is digital, it was focused on digitization. We were involved in project library digitization, cooperating with publishers, but internally cooperating with all teachers at university to digitize what they were presenting, what they write on the blackboard. A blind person is not able to see. When we go into a lab, whatever you do in a lab, when you're in a wheelchair or whatever, you're not able to handle it. How can we virtualize, digitize, and with sensor and actuator technology, allow them to take part? But in particular, because all these technology is not ready, we provided opportunities to adapt the studying process. If you are not able to see, if you're not able, for example, when you do in computer science, computer vision, or whatever, how can we replace the subject that the study course can be done? And so this practical approach allowed us to do also very practice-oriented research. And the services we developed, it's very personal because the requirements of the individual person are so different. The biggest thing, and what we got as a feedback from students was, there is a point where I can go and where I can be sure somebody takes care. This, so to say, welcome policy and say, no, this is not possible. No, this is difficult, we can't do it. To overcome this, to see inclusion, this is a responsibility, as you said it yourself. It's not a question of the individual situation. It is the question how we design the environment. In our case, the study environment. And that's what we actually did. And so to say, we implemented measures from before students come to university. I mean, starting study is difficult for everybody. If you have a disability, the first 2 semesters are easily lost to get oriented, to get your, to find your classroom, to get all your materials in digital accessible format, and. So we get in contact, we support them at university, mainly in making accessible all teaching materials, but also inclusion, social inclusion. We have social workers here, we have peer students here helping us, and we also look towards the next step, becoming a researcher, entering into the labor market, placements and things like this for students, so to say that it becomes part of the user experience, that we are, as a university, open for all kind of students.
That's really interesting and really important. Yeah. Thank you a lot. So, Dr. Leung, when we prepared this talk, we happened to come across your research project at Novartis, you presented earlier, and you told me about an inclusive approach in research funding, and you call it the double-blind application process. Could you please give us some short insights about this process, and do you think if they could be transferred to other fields such as the job market, and if they could be useful for promoting the inclusion of everyone?
Right. I think so. Yes, the inclusion in research, I think, is really important, because the more different types of people you have doing research, and the more different the ideas are, the more creative they are. And sometimes in academia or in research, this is not often the case, because only certain type of people will get the funding, basically. And so what I really liked about how we got our funding was this program, which had a double-blind selection process. And that means that we don't know who the referees are, and they don't know who we are. They only looked at the idea, and they only judged what idea to grant by whether the idea was original and had potential. That was the only criteria. It wasn't, did this person already have a track record in this field? Have they published enough preliminary data? I mean, all those things are important. I'm not saying get rid of those things, but I think to have a bit of diversity in the funding scene, where there also is room for people to just say, look, I have this idea, I like to try it out, and that is welcome. That really allows people to be creative. And this idea of the blind audition comes from the music world, actually, where in the 70s, there was maybe less than 5% of women in the top 5 orchestras in the US. And then they started implementing blind auditions, which means there's a huge screen between the judges and whoever is auditioning. By the 80s, there was 10% of women. By 1997, there was 25% of women, all because now that you no longer see who was playing. And it's basically just a bias that made somebody think, well, a woman can't play a trumpet because they don't have large enough lungs, or whatever bias is working there. And it's the same thing. If you make certain funding processes, for example, double blind, it's possible that you get just really creative ideas that would be surprising to people, because otherwise the researchers, like young researchers, would benefit from this, or mature researchers who've been working in one field and suddenly had an idea, want to do something completely different. They could benefit from this.
Thank you. So I would like to come back to Dr. Miesenberger. You told us it's very it's individual, and you don't have like a solution for everyone, for all students, but you tailor it to the single student. And I would like to ask you, why do you think is it more expensive and challenging to develop inclusive solutions? Is it because of that, and are costs the only reason why we're still a bit behind in those terms?
Thanks for the question. I think the issue is perhaps a narrow view to the bookkeeping. Of course, support, of course, services have a cost. But the issue is, in particular, in the field of inclusion of people with disabilities, but I'm sure also in the healthcare domain, the issue we don't take into account the benefit we have. So to say, we must, in the calculation, we must not only see the costs, but the implication. The issue is the benefit we have for the social system, but also the benefit of having more clients when you're more accessible, more open, is enormous. But those who develop, we as a university developing the services, the costs, the cost savings, the benefit for society of this is not seen at the same time. And this, so to say, needs, I would say, a broader view, not seeing it at cost, but this is an investment. It is not only a social investment in people, but in the long run, it is also an economic investment for society and also business investment. The more people are able to use systems and services, the better they are educated, assistive technology support they have. They are customers, they buy products, and they are not dependent on others if we are able to develop these services. And if we see it more in this open way, we have, besides the investment, we have the return of investments, of savings, or perhaps if these are savings, we can invest even more to better well-being, to better build well-being, and to build a better society in different domains. And this is actually, I think, how we should see that. It's not only the cost. Of course, there are costs, but this is what we should do. We should invest in quality of life. And I think there are not a lot of better investments we can do than investing in people.
That's absolutely true. And this leads me to my next question to Dr. Plunger. Let's move to social follow-up costs resulting from non-participation, like not being able to earn your own money or being in need of state aid or premature retirement because your company doesn't want to adapt your workplace after an accident. Could you provide some insights here?
Yeah, I guess it could be, kind of two streams of argument here. That the one would be more like a normative argument, like saying that this is, from an equity perspective, this is bad for us as a society to exclude people, and more from an, like more down to earth quality argument. We could say, for example, in health services, we know that health services that are, developed together with users and, and professionals are much more aligned to the, to the needs of the users and the professionals. So actually, it's, better services coming out of this process. And of course, and I totally agree with Klaus Miesenberger, who was saying, first you always see the costs and the short-time costs, but and it doesn't really help if you provide papers proving that there is some added value in the mid or in the long run. I think you have to experience it as a professional, maybe. And this was also, something really what really fascinated me in the dementia-friendly pharmacy project. To give you an example, we always had this kind of breakthrough moment in our interdisciplinary workshop. So caregivers and the person with dementia really participated as experts, of experience, and this, changed the whole workshop, because in a normal, kind of healthcare situation, you as a pharmacist are basically counseling a person whom you might imagine of, not knowing enough or, being in need of help, which, it's totally okay to be in the need to need help, but, this is not the only, experience you have. So in these workshops, it was really like a click breakthrough moment when the professionals realized that they now can talk to experts about what they are doing in their daily, professional lives. And I guess, this is really something which I would count to social costs if you miss that. And also what was also very, what we were also very happy about, that, the professionals themselves told us, oh, it's not only about, being dementia friendly in that case. These kinds of services or approaches you develop, they also help you with older people or younger people. It's just being, user friendly in a very broad sense. So it's kind of extended their vision how they could develop services who are, beneficial for, many different groups of users. And I think this is also an issue. The last thing I would like to mention is like, you don't, at first glance, you don't really see if a person lives with a cognitive impairment. And, some people are like, oh, maybe, if we could see, or if we could tag them somehow so that we know they have special needs. So, I mean, it should be completely the other way around. We should, be the ones who are offering support and good services, and not that people have constantly to expose themselves and say, we need something, so this was also, something we learned during the workshops. But basically it really was that, it's not just a narrow focus on, let's say, a certain disease or whatever, but that, involving people in a very broad sense could help you with developing better services, and also, gain something as a society or as professionals as a whole.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Dr. Loing, I would like to come back to a question from the chat. You mentioned AR and VR before. How are viewing distances in this context, like when you're virtually looking at a distance but physically on a screen, what does that do to your eyes?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't think I know immediately of an answer. I'll probably have to think of that one a bit further myself. And yeah, but just coming back, I think a bit to the diversity and the inclusion. I think we really need to start with ourselves, as be the change that you want to see in the world. And a lot of us are researchers. And so we need to look around at our environment. Do the researchers, are they representative of society? Because we usually research things that are meaningful to us. And for example, I researched myopia because I'm highly myopic myself, and I was concerned that my child might be myopic too, and so I wanted to inform myself. So people like people are going to discover things that are kind of close to their hearts. And so the more people you have involved in research, the more you're going to get as a society out of it. And I think that's valuable beyond any kind of what you would be able to measure ultimately on a spreadsheet. So it's really this idea of creativity as a society. I think that's something that we really need to think about. And it really starts with the research community as well.
Thank you. Mentioning the research community, there is a question from the chat I would like to forward to Dr. Plunger. And Tom asks, the world is so diverse, yet a lot of the research I come across uses majoritively white males. Does this take value away from existing research, and is this so difficult to change going forward? And I guess that's an interesting question, because that's also something we observe in pharma research, for example.
Yeah, actually, I have to say this is not something I observe in the research I'm doing. This could be, basically because there are, more women affected of living with dementia than men. So basically self-help groups, and more women are taking care of people living with dementia. So it's kind of, it's a lot of, this is really different from what you might experience in more, in other areas of research. But I definitely agree that I was just reading an article yesterday about biomedical research and the leaky pipeline, and that somehow the research environment triggers that women are just seeking their way somewhere else, but not in research, which is really unfortunate, I have to say. But for the area I'm involved in, this is actually not so much the case. Maybe because it's social science research, I don't know. Could be.
Well, I guess that's a social part of social science, isn't it?
And just one more thing, and it's participatory research, which doesn't give you high grants, and a lot of which basically it's about this another very it's kind of it's not an outsider research actually, but it's kind of not giving you high grants and maybe not high status, and it's not so easy to publish. So this might be reasons for that. But I definitely don't want to complain. I'm very happy with what I'm doing.
Thank you very much for your statement. So from my point of view, I'm from a medical sciences background. I can really say that the problem with white males, mid-aged white males, is something that gets really, really focused on now in gender medicine research. And giving back to the question from the chat, if you're interested in ongoing research in this field, really look for publications dealing with gender medicine and viewing diseases from a gender perspective and from a public health perspective, because this might be interesting for you. And like I said before, the white males problem is something we had in pharma research quite for a long time, and still a bit ongoing. And this is really something that it's in the focus of gender research nowadays from a medical perspective, from a medical background. So you were a really great panel. With the time in mind, I would like to thank you for this inspiring talk, and I could really go on for ages. And I really hope to meet some of you for a coffee back in university. For you at home, we hope that's the message you got. There is such a lot of things you can and you should consider when developing inclusive technology. And it's something every one of us should think about. And you might think of it the next time you do it, and you might give it a try. And with that, I want to thank you so much for your participation. And I would like to hand over back to Jacob. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariella, for making this inspiring chat sponsored by Digital Makers Hub possible. I think the best chance actually to change certain circumstances or meanings and opinions is actually to just do something against it. And if one of the things that we can provide, then this is a very diverse panel, I would say, from younger people to middle-aged people. Maybe we need some more older people who will join us in this virtual domains in the future, but we are working, every one of us is working on this, I guess. So in the end, this leaves me also for thanking everyone who participated. Had a really strong response from the people all over the world, I would have to say, or at least Austria and Europe. There's still around 70 people being online for the end of this very inspiring Build.well.being 2021. Thank you all for being here, and I also hope to see you again soon in presence, be it in Linz, be it in Vienna, be it somewhere else on the world. I think we are all looking forward to this, and this leaves us now to the most beautiful weather outside. Hopefully, some of us still have to work, but I guess we'll make it to the afternoon, and the sun is long enough shining today. So thank you very much, and see you next time at the Build.well.being next year. Goodbye.
Gratulation.